Welcome everybody joining us here at Life of Worship this morning, or this afternoon, or whatever time it is. And everybody that's here, it's good to see your smiling faces. Well, y'all get on, if you're here in town in Amarillo, y'all need to get on over here and be part of the Torah portion and the encounter service today. By the way, so we'll have the encounter service at 3 o'clock. So once we get done with the Torah portion, we'll have that hour break or hour or so break, and then come back at 3 Central Time and for our encounter service. So we'd love for everybody to join us there. And by the way, I did want to mention this, is that anybody that goes online to give, I went and I checked 3 different browsers and our website is working just fine. I don't know what happened. So it's good. So if you're using the website to do that, all you have to do is, as opposed to a smart device, just go to Life of Worship Amarillo.org, and then you hit the donate tab at the top of the page. It'll give you a drop down or open up a page where you can donate. Click the donate button and it'll take you to the site where you can give online.
And if you're doing it on a computer, I tried to put donate a PC. I tried to put a donate button on every page just because if I'm there, it's easy access. It's supposed to translate to the phone when I do that. I'm not a webmaster, and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. I mean, I am the webmaster for our website, but I am not a master. I am far from that. So.
Well, that's why we got the software to actually do all the thinking for you,
but it's not doing what it's supposed
and do all the working for you. And sometimes it just doesn't do like.
It could be operator error, but it might not be. So who knows?
Rick, would you mind opening us in prayer?
Father, we just thank you for the Shabbat. We know that it's special to your heart, and therefore we want to make it special for our heart too. We just thank you for all the blessings that you put upon our family and our friends, and we just ask that you continually watch over the people when they're out there, just like Abraham. Just be with our family. You know, it's all a family deal, and if they're part of our group, they're family. So watch over all of us, keep us under your wings, keep us safe, and thank you for your Shabbat. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So big Torah portion, like the first 2 Torah portions, which we broke down in 2 weeks. With the scheduling now, we can't break this down into 2 weeks. So hopefully we can just hit. Okay, so let's get a rundown here on the Torah portion, and because there's a lot involved in it. And so here's the summary of the Torah portion. It's called Vayera. And anybody, what does it mean?
He appeared.
The big He appeared.
The big He appeared. That's a good way to say it. And of course, when you start out with the Vav at the beginning of it, it is giving you an idea of and He appeared. So it's like a continuation of a story of something that's really big, and because in this Torah portion, it's I think it's one of the first appearances of the Messiah, the Christophany. It's not a first appearance of Messiah. Of course, you go back to the garden, and I think you get a picture of that as well. But here now in the lineage, beginning with Abraham, we have that first Christophany, and that's where I think we would see, and it is Genesis 18:1 through Genesis 22:24. I have in the Haftorah readings 2 Kings 4:1 through 37, and there's a whole bunch of Brit Hadashah readings, which I'm not going to have a breakdown of the Torah study, and it has this the idea in 18:1 that a son is promised to Abraham and Sarah. We have judgment on Sodom. We have the depravity of Sodom. We have Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. We have the shameful origin of Moab and Ammon. And we have Abraham and Sarah at Gerar, and the birth of Isaac. Hagar and Ishmael sent away. Abraham and Abimelech make a covenant. The command of to sacrifice Isaac and the children of Nahor. Okay, and that's the Torah portion.
Okay, we're done.
Whoa. We go back at 3 o'clock and
And every one of those things is loaded with all sorts of neat little nuggets. So hopefully we'll just be able to, we'll catch a few of those nuggets. So I think one of the things, and I know in terms of review of a part of what we've talked about in the past of this Torah portion is Abraham's character, which we also see represented in Lot. And going to Genesis 18, let's go to Genesis 18:2 and let's read a little bit.
I'm going to start with the first verse. Then Yehovah appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked. I'm going to pause right there. When you see that phrase, so he lifted his eyes, it is a prophetic phrase. It means he is beginning to see beyond the natural. So, just as an FYI, because I might want to talk about that. So he lifted his eyes and looked and beheld 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground and said, My Yehovah, I have now found if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass on by your servant. Please let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. Okay, I want you to take note of how many times you hear the word tree. And I will bring a morsel of bread that you may refresh your hearts. After that you may pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant. They said, Do as you have said. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, Quickly, make ready 3 measures of the fine meal, knead it, and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and he hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk and the calf which he had prepared and set it before them, and stood by them under the tree, and they ate. Then he said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? So he said, Here, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Verse 10, Joy, can you read that in your version?
He said, I will certainly return to you around this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son.
Okay, well, hold on a minute. Then I'm going to look over here in the transliteration in the Hebrew real quick, because there's something about shuv 2 times there. So Yomor shuv, shuv is what it says. I will return. Okay, that's what you read in the Hebrew, and that's good. I want you guys to remember that too, because if something's mentioned twice, there's a first return and a second. There's a I'm coming and I'm coming again. Remember, everything is prophetic. I'm coming and I'm coming again. I will turn and turn again. Okay, so there we go. I will certainly return. So certainly it really should be shuv, really, was what it should say. At that time of life, behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Sarah was listening at the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah passed the age of childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself. Okay, that within herself is, she's laughing almost about her own. Really? Look at this flesh. Look at this body. Okay. And let's see, where was I there? Laughed within herself. After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure? My Lord, that could also be, then we're going to talk about resurrection. My Lord, being old also. And Yehovah said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I surely bear a child since I'm old? Is anything too hard for Yehovah? At the appointed time, I will return to you. Oh my goodness. Do you see that again? There's another return. According to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. And Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. Then the men rose from there and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them on their way. And Yehovah said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm doing, since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed for him? For I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after him, and that they keep the way of Yehovah to do the righteousness and justice. and that Yehovah may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him. And Yehovah said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because the sin is very grave, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I will know. Then the men turned towards there and went over towards Sodom, but Abraham still stood before Yehovah. And Abraham came near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there were 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing as this, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as the wicked. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? So Yehovah said, if I can find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. Then Abraham answered and said, indeed now, I, who am but dust and ashes, have taken it upon myself to speak to Yehovah. Suppose there were 5 less than 50 than the 50 righteous. Would you destroy the city for lack of 5? So he said, if I find 45, I shall not destroy it. And he spoke to him yet again and said, suppose there should be 40 found there. So he said, I will not do it for the sake of 40. Then he said, let not Yehovah be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 should be found there. I won't do it if there's 30. Okay, that was paraphrased. And he said, indeed now, I've taken upon myself to speak to Yehovah. Suppose 20 should be found there. So he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. Then he said, let not Yehovah be angry, and I will speak but once more. Suppose 10 should be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. So Yehovah went his way as soon as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. Okay, I would love to jump in here and just talk about, just in this part, the more you study Torah, the more you see prophecy every week. A messianic prophecy about Yeshua, and of course Yeshua is showing up in this one, in my opinion. And just see these prophetic overtones throughout this. Okay, so I'm going to start from where we just left off, and I'm going to go backwards. Hope you don't mind, Pastor John. Anyway, what we see here, think of a city that's full of the wicked. Okay, think of a place that the majority of the people are wicked. Yahweh set a precedence here, and he said, you know what? For 10 righteous, I won't destroy the city. So this should give us hope for our families even, because here we are interceding for our loved ones, that they would love him, that they would not face the destruction. And yet here we see this being set with Abraham. Yahweh will let the wicked live to save those he loves. And that concept there is pretty amazing. So yes, I know that prophetically that the place where we live in this hemisphere may not always be here, but right now he does say, for the sake of 10, I will spare the city. Now, when evil does come our way, he has his protective hand that he can cover us in the midst of the storms, in the midst of nuclear attack, in the midst of an invasion or whatever it may be. Just like he has his arms that protect that family member for your sake, he saves them. I mean, haven't we sort of seen that? He saves our families because he loves us. Now our families still have to make choices. Rick?
I believe that he goes even further than the 10 righteous. You remember in Isaiah, he makes a statement, I will give up Cush for you, for your salvation, for you. That's for one. I mean, he would give up an entire nation for that one.
That's...
Was he not talking about Israel, though? That one? Was it not killed? I don't know, I'm asking.
Well, I think the concept here, though, is look what he is doing for us. He loves us. He loves us. And, you know, hopefully our desires, we have let his desires become our desires. And he wants us to walk righteously. And he is looking for a bride that will stand up even in the midst of evil everywhere. And you see that you see that evil even towards the end of the Torah portion, where Abraham goes into Abimelech's place, and he's like, before he gets there, he says, "Man, this isn't a good place. This is a bad place. This bad here. So I'm gonna, And we see here another wicked nation, but yet he preserves his people in the midst of the wickedness." Joy.
So, on election day, I went and held up signs for Proposition A.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that I see it or realize it, but you could just tell the people that were not for that. Okay, and I'm telling you, they have a look about them. They have a dead black look in their eyes, or a dead look. It's like there's no light. And then the people that were thumbs up, you could just see the difference between them and I'm telling you, the way they dress, the way they look, and just the way they move, they have no light, guys. I mean, it's so sad.
But what's sad, okay, you guys don't know, Proposition 8 is what Pastor John has talked about a lot over the last year, and it's about the places that slaughter babies here in Amarillo.
It's to make Amarillo a sanctuary city for the unborn.
Because we have a place that California and every other place brings in parts and processes them.
California, Kansas, they send their aborted babies to Amarillo to be destroyed.
But anyway, just briefly, so we got enough signatures with a lot of work to put an amendment that we would become a sanctuary city like Lubbock, Texas, like isn't Odessa or Abilene or
Midland, Odessa, Abilene, Plainview is one.
Plainview. So we have great
Lubbock. Cities
around here that are supposed to be not as conservative as this area, and they have said, "Hey, we want to protect the life of the unborn." And yet Amarillo, and to me it's industry, voted no. And here's the big part: most pastors and people in churches said no. It's the churches that said, we don't want that. We don't want that. What if it turned into this or that or the other? To me, that's sad. So just as a brief background, so you guys know, but that's wicked. So no matter how conservative we may look, there's wickedness at the core of Amarillo, Texas.
That's what I was getting at. I don't think I realized it until then. I was like, oh wow.
It's a spirit.
Yes.
It's a wicked spirit.
Yeah.
And Bob said process for consumption. That is so disgusting. But here we are. What do we should have the same job as Abraham, and we should be crying out, would you save us but for this? But for that.
It should be said that the other side did that by deceiving the people and tell them, look,
they did.
if you vote,
It's George Soros funded. That's exactly right.
Well, Irma.
And that's why Plainview and Lubbock get all that rain. They're blessed just because of that. They
Yeah.
get tons of rain.
Okay, everybody, Amarilloans, if you're listening, shame on you. And if you are a believer, I would, and you voted against that. I'm sorry. I would really. What form of Jesus are you serving? Because it's the blood cries out.
But wasn't
Well-
the question worded deceptively? I mean, in other words, wasn't it worded so that you voted?
It was clear. It was clear. It was very
Was it
plain
clear?
language.
Well, I know
yeah, but
somebody
they
was
turned
talking about
around
their
and said,
word
well, if you
question.
vote for this, then this is going to happen. You're voting for this to happen.
Yeah.
And so they deceived the
They were
people.
saying that.
So it's through their words, but not through the way it was written.
It was the propaganda against it. Is what was
Oh, okay.
what was the evil part of it.
Twyla, speak up.
I have a question, and it's just out of nowhere. But if our water is being shared with y'all,
Is it?
maybe God
Aqua-
is preparing this
aquifer.
area and is being rejected by some, so it'll go on to somewhere else.
Will it spread?
And we they've got water for us again coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, again, here we are. We have that position to say, Father, save us. Wake us up. And if we are truly going back to the call that was from the garden, we've got to remember the enemy should be trampled under our feet. And if we act sheepishly, and I know there's one person in this room that I know shouts the name of Yah every time he can get it, and that's Rick Freeman. Which wherever he goes, wherever he drives all over the nation, he will let you know about his Yah. But we should all be like that, because we are supposed to be, the enemy should be under our feet. He is, but we forget who we are. We lose our identity. And we should be taking the ground the enemy's stolen. So maybe where you live in Canada or elsewhere in the United States, or maybe your state or your city or something is just as Abraham said of Abimelech's place. Is it that's a bad place. There's nothing good about that. Maybe it looks like, maybe it's close to Sodom, maybe it's close to Gomorrah, but what is our job? Salt still preserves, and light still penetrates darkness. Therefore, we have that job. And this Torah portion, especially, you just look at the very first chapter, is all about resurrection. Resurrection, guys. That means what was once dead is now alive. So the dead heart lives once again. The dead land, the dead city can once again bloom. Think about the Dead Sea that's now blooming in areas you go there. And I go back, and when you go to Israel, all the places that were once desert, you find vegetation there. Vegetation, that food. And when you eat that food, your stomach never gets upset or sick, because that food is pure, unlike what we grow here in the United States. But it's coming to life. Why? Because it's resurrection. And you see in this Torah portion this resurrection language, because Sarah and Abraham, what they talk about, their flesh is dead. Well, what causes your flesh to come alive again? It's the power of our Messiah. And we see, okay, if Yeshua physically showed up and says, hey, guess what? You're going to have a kid. Child. Sorry, Beryl. They were past the age to have a child.
We're going to say, what if one of us was going to have a child?
Well, I wasn't, but we'll think about that. I'd be like, oh, Father, give me energy. Well, think about that. Not only did their body have to be restored to have the child, but then think what it takes to have the child in your house.
That's all right. I'd make Killian take care of it at my house.
Killian would go to work. She'll say, hey, Mom. Anyway, so we see resurrection language here, and not only there. As I want to go back to that resurrection picture, but I want you to think about the tree. When it talks about Abraham being under the tree, okay, what time of year?
Summer.
Okay, well, this is supposed to be the first month, and we see that because Lot made unleavened bread.
Yeah. Passover.
Yeah, and we see that, it's talking about the appointed time. So this is happening at the appointed time. So if that is the case...
So the one thing to keep in mind then, it is the 15th, this would be the 15th day of the first month, if you want to look at it that way. Or, as some of the writings say, it says in the middle of the first month. And when you look at the commentaries, it's in the middle of the first month. And of course, there's a connection, and which we've talked about in the past, that in 1 year, then a son would be born in the middle of the first month. And what's also very interesting, and there's some, and this is where the rabbis differ, because they decided to change up everything. But the Dead Sea Scrolls actually has preserved and brought out the truth and the information, is that at the binding of Isaac, is that when he was on Mount Moriah and he was being laid on the altar there, that it was on the 15th day of the first month. Now the rabbis will say the first day of the 7th month was the binding, the Akiva, the binding of Isaac, but it's not true. It was all on Passover. So the representation here, now we have 3 different Passovers, also represented with the unleavened bread that Lot was giving, and also Abraham, when he fed them, they didn't have time for the bread to rise. They got it to them right away and fed them. So we have all of those different examples that show that this is a feast day. It's a special day, or a an appointed time, because in verse 14 it says, is anything too difficult for Yahweh? At the appointed time I will return to you. At this time next year Sarah shall have a son. So again, the appointed time was not by mistake that it was used. It wasn't like, okay, at the this time next year I'm going to return. So no, at the appointed time. So this is a day that we get where it's a special time to be in the presence of Yah. So I think those are all different parallels that connect it all together. But it's sad to say that that the rabbis actually have taught against it, as in so many different areas. They change the times and the dates and the seasons in order to hide and make mysteries of the word that's supposed to be plain and simple for us to follow.
Joy.
Well, it makes the sense, and maybe I'm saying this, everybody got it, but just think about how Yeshua was the one talking to Abraham, but I believe Yeshua was the one that led Lot out. I mean, he covered them like he did in the Exodus. He covered them at that time with the blood, if you will, and got them out of that while that destruction was going on. So he delivered them like Exodus. I mean, that just makes sense. That's probably already been brought out. Somebody probably already thought of that, but that's what makes me think of.
He delivered them, and
Right?
he had to push them out because they didn't really want to leave. It was
No,
like, yeah,
and I
but
agree, but I
that he
think
got them out.
after some of the Israelites got up, they kind of changed their mind. So
It's
kind
true.
Of kind of the same, I guess.
That's
Anyway,
true.
something
That's
about-
true. So we
I
have.
want to draw on that, because I think it's also important to think in terms of the prophetic meaning, because we're talking about different elements of prophecy. It also makes sense that, as in the first Exodus, that they left at Passover, that we would be called out of Babylon at the time of Passover. It would make sense. Now, is that?
Because that's 2 Exoduses at Passover.
Yeah. So we have these times of fulfillment.
Maybe ours will be
Go for a
3.
third.
There's 3.
A greater. It's called a greater Exodus. So,
So how that happens, when that happens,
although we always look at every feast day, is this going to be the feast day that happens? But I mean,
is there going to be something special, an outpouring, miracle, miraculous?
If you think about it, it kind of makes sense a little bit.
Yeah.
You never know, but our thoughts are not his thoughts. So.
Yeah.
what you have is you have 2 visitors, and they're called. We call them angels, and so I and they have mission, and I believe that's angelic because what do angels have a mission, right? They're supposed to carry on a specific task, and so I believe that that could be they're messengers, and they have a task to do, and they do it.
Guardians, I guess.
But there's three, and then some say it's representing, there's 3 and Yeshua is one. So you have that idea as well. So what would Alyssa say? Yes, But I want us to go back. I want to go back up to resurrection again.
But the witnesses can also be considered messengers. So witnesses and messengers are
Yeshua
interchangeable.
witnesses,
Yeah.
Good.
So I want us to go back to this idea of trees, and I want you to understand Abraham was not this guy that things happened to. He was a man of Yah all his life, and he did things with a purpose. So many times we may think that this guy was out there and God chose him because he was just the best of what those. No. Think of the tents of Shem. Think of how he was raised and taught. But this guy stood out. I mean, think about it. He's the older guy. And in last Torah portion, hey, look, we got to separate. Our people are fighting and arguing, and you choose, I choose that. And he's like, fine. Even though officially he could have done something else, and ultimately we know. Then he goes and fights for Lot and gets him back, and Lot goes back to his vomit and goes back to the same place and does that. But nonetheless, it says here that he appeared to him, Yehovah appeared to him by the terebinth tree of Mamre as he was sitting at the tent door. Oh hell, tent. That idea of tent. In that time, you could also think of tent. That's That's where he met with Yahweh. So it was sort of this idea, sort of a tabernacle sort of thing. I'm not saying that it was, guys. I'm not saying that. But I want you to picture this prophetically. He's sitting by the door. Now, officially, Hebrew-wise, it's common to have somebody come and visit you on your third sick day. And it's the third sick day because, they had the circumcision in there. But yet, whatever conditions he's in, the minute he sees them, does he let the condition that he's in or his body's in stop him from being a man who welcomes everybody there? A man who welcomes you, wants to give you a drink, give you a meal, and then when you're done with that, he's going to lead you. He's going to lead you in the Torah. He's going to lead you to Yah. He's going to make you part of the kingdom if he can, and whatever it looks like at the time. So, and that's why it says he's sitting at the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and there's no extra words in the Torah. Everyone's for a purpose. He lifted his eyes and looked and beheld. So he saw Ra. He was seeing something. He was looking beyond. So let me go back there to the Hebrew, and I'm getting this off the fly, guys. So, and what verse was that? Okay.
Verse 4.
Well, you saw Yahweh, Yahweh, Yaretz on Patak. Ha-ohel, that tent. Yes. Okay, and lift up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw, and of course, you know what saw is there, right? It's the Ra. And he ran to meet them. So he saw and he ran to meet them from the ohel, the door. Okay, what's the door when you think of the door? We know it's a dalet, but what do you think about it? The door, when I think of the door, he ran to meet them from the tent door. We always think of Yeshua as the door. I think that. And he bowed himself towards the ground, the eretz, the land. So let's go back to this idea of this tent. And, well, no, let's go back to the idea of a tree. And then it later talks about he ran from the tent door to meet them, bowed himself low, and I'm looking for all the pictures of tree. Where do you guys see that? I pointed it out as we were reading. Please let your water be brought yourselves.
Verse 4 is
and
tree.
Put your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. Now remember, it already said that he was lifting his eyes. So now he's looking into the prophetic realm. He's not just looking into the earthly realm here, if you look at it that way. So they sat under the tree. They were under the tree. Now, I told you that this Torah portion's a lot about resurrection. So let's think about the tree. Do we have anything here? There's several ways you could go with this, because there is a tree. When you think of the tree, the stake or the tree, you think of Yeshua and the tree. So you think of that picture. But you think of trees can also be men. And then you think of the tree, you're walking in the spirit of Yah, because we have this tree. The menorah, and you have the 7 spirits of Yah with Yeshua in the middle. And so we already know we're dealing with unleavened bread, and the third feast, of course, the third is the first fruits, which would correspond with trumpets and things like that. But so I want us to take this picture, because he says tree over and over and over in this. Sit yourselves under the tree. They are by the tree. Yes.
Well, this whole verse is loaded, so keep those tree thoughts. But it says, this is totally messianic. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Well, what was it that Yeshua did on his way to the tree? Is that he washed the feet of his disciples before he was before he went to the tree was laid to rest.
And I was going to talk about that. See, we see these prophetic overtones that if you don't study, you don't see. He's showing us himself from the very beginning. Here's my plan. This is what I'm laying out here. But you rest under me. We rest under Yeshua.
Let me add one other comment, because it really goes along with this tree thoughts, and that's over in verse 1. where it says, and Yahweh appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. Now that word plains, by the way, when you look up the definition, it can mean plain, but it means an oak or other strong tree, like a terebinth tree. So an oak tree, a terebinth tree. So we read it in English as plains, and we don't think about any trees. And yet now we're talking about trees, but it's in this place where there's a grove of trees, and that's where Abraham has set up camp. And just keep this in mind, Mamre means richness or fatness. And so remember what happened in Genesis chapter 12? Abraham went down to Egypt and came out of Egypt rich. He was blessed by Pharaoh. Is told, hey, I don't want any problems. Here's a whole bunch of herds and cattle and servants, etc. Get out of here. So he came out abundantly more than what he had before. And now he gets to this place. He's got a huge flock, but it's in the place of fatness, a place of where there's of strength. And when you think of fatness, it means there's such abundance. So now he's sitting, and where is Lot? Lot went to the place where it was supposed to be abundant, but he's up here on the mountain that's abundant, there's more than enough. But I think it's even relating what Pastor Sandy is actually saying, is that he's sitting in this place that it's ready, it's birthing something spiritually fat.
And he's looking beyond the natural realm.
And that is where I think where we see this whole setup of that it's not like a barren place with no trees. There's lots of trees, and but something strong, something rich is about to be shown to us, that we're supposed to have revelation to. So the whole Torah portion says, hey, this is loaded. We got something for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Isaiah 61:3. Yes, provide for those in Zion who mourn, giving them garlands instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the cloak of praise instead of a heavy spirit. So they will be called oaks of righteousness, planted by Yahweh, in which he takes pride. think that's kind of cool.
I like that.
I don't even know if it goes, but I think it just reminded me of that verse.
Right.
Talking about the oaks. And
I want to.
No,
Did
it's
you
good.
have something?
It's good.
No. Yeah. No. Okay. I want us to go back. So now we have this idea of this prophetic look. He's lifting his eyes, so he's seeing beyond the natural realm. There's three there that he's serving, and we're talking about tree, whether it's by looking at the spirits of Yah at the menorah, or we are the branch and he is the tree and we're to sit under him, or even alluding, since there's so much resurrection in this, especially in this chapter, to Yeshua and the resurrection, and that we're being resurrected, our bodies are being resurrected, etc., etc. But in the midst of this is the tent, and our patriarch Abraham, his tent came to signify the place or the presence of the Shekinah of Yah, and on earth, just like the tabernacular temple. And that was what I was alluding to earlier, because ohel, the word tent, ohel, actually means to shine. So he's at the door of that place of the presence. Wait, what was he doing there? If it was feast time, what's he doing? Do we expect to meet our Yah at an appointed time? So he's sitting there and he sees them. He's sitting at the door. Who's the door? Yeshua's the door. He's sitting there at the presence in the Shekinah of Yah, and here comes Yeshua himself. He's meeting with Yeshua. That same idea. We should expect to meet Yeshua at every time we are an appointed time. And guess what? Today is an appointed moed today. So we should expect to meet him. So let's go with that idea of this tent, this ohel, that means to shine. It has 42 in its gematria, but ohel is diminished because it's missing the vav. So maybe this tent is the temporary shelter of the Shekinah, which it is. It's the temporary shelter. And when a permanent house, which would be Yeshua, is built, then redemption would be complete. And 42 also is the value of the names, one of the names of Yah, which has 42 letters. And in addition, 42 stages to the journey of the Israelites, and in 14 different locations. Anyway, there's all based on 3 sets of 14, and we can keep going from there. The Zohar, which I don't like to quote it usually, but it says, journeys when God brought the Jews out from Egypt, he brought them out with the mystery of the 42-letter name, just as he created heaven and earth. I'm just referencing that so you have something. But Matthew 1:17, let's turn there real quick. Matthew 1:17. It says, so all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David until the carrying away to Babylon are 14 generations, and from carrying away to Babylon unto Mashiach are 14 generations. So, according to the sages, Yah brought the world into existence with the first 42 letters of the Torah. And since the Torah is actually the blueprint of creation, it's designed with 42 lines in each column. So you go there, and there's this significance with 42 that shows up here, with that can be referencing the Shekinah or the Ohel, the which not the Shekinah itself, but that presence of God on earth, of Yah on earth, and here in this temporary shelter, this temporary place to meet, which was Abraham's tent. And yet here we are. We have a tent of flesh, a temporary tent of flesh that will receive resurrection one day, because its flesh is dead, and the moment you're born, you're growing, but you're dying too at the same time. And I know that's not a great way to look at it. It's a half empty, isn't it? But yet there's truth to that. And so we have this idea of this resurrection of this temporary for the permanent home, for the new, for to be clothed in the new, his new garments that he gives us, where the dead flesh, like Sarah, like Abraham, will once again produce life. But yet Yah can make our dead flesh produce life here, and it may not be a physical child, or maybe it will be, but we're still supposed to reproduce children, right? Each and every one of us, we are supposed to
I've already done that. I don't need to again.
But we're to multiply we're to make more disciples for him. That's what we're supposed to, disciple all nations. So here we have this, and lead them to the door which was the entrance to the place of his presence. Who is that? That door is Yeshua. And reminded to sit under the tree, for we are the branch and he is the tree. And while we're under that tree, they are protected from the elements, of course. And there we see the washing of the feet and hands, which Pastor John always brought out. But here we have, and I could go on, but I'm taking over your time. We just keep having this picture of resurrection in Yeshua, this prophetic insight into who we are and who we're supposed to be, because we look to Father Abraham. Think about it. All these thousands of years later, his name is remembered. Why? Is it remembered because he was just some guy whose things happened to him? No. Because he was a man of faith, a man that walked in truth, a man that stood firmly in what he believed, even when it comes to the sacrifice of his own son. He says, I have a promise, and that promise, Yah fulfills his word. So whether he lives or die this very hour, I will still have a son. Do we face our promises like that? I talked last week about who holds our promises. Do we confidently give up what he tells us to get up, or do we hold on to something that's dead? Again, dead flesh that actually needs to be cut up and not resurrected, because we think that's our promise, when in reality the promise is something far greater. You know, when he saw Abraham was willing to give and did give everything, so he knew exactly where to pitch his tent. Do we know exactly where to pitch our tents? He pitched his tent where? He was by the terebinth tree. A reason and a purpose. So, Okay, I can go on and on, but I'll let you.
Well, I want to dig in a little bit more into the terebinth tree itself. And so, because we don't have trees around here that we call terebinth trees, and of course, we're happy to have a tree in the panhandle of Texas. And so it is the Latin name is Pistacia terebinthus. It's a deciduous tree native to the Mediterranean region. It's also known as the turpentine tree, mastic tree, and the chios mastic tree. And it's in the family, I'm not going to go into that word there, but it's in the family that includes the cashews, the pistachios, and poison ivy. Interesting enough.
I've been seeing one doctor that pops up in the ads on YouTube. He says pistachios are related to the poison ivy.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah. So the terebinth tree. So here's some in terms of the spiritual value, significance that we see within Scripture, or things that are related to this tree. I think we can get some things out of it. And it's mentioned over 25 times in the Scriptures. And it's associated with sacred spaces and divine encounters. So sacred spaces and divine encounters. I mean, that's what we see right here in this Torah portion, a divine encounter. And also in Genesis chapter 12, when we started out with this whole life of Abraham, it also talks about the terebinth tree. So, and that was a divine encounter when Yah gives him a covenant that you get yourself up out of this place and move to a place I'm going to show you. The tree symbolizes strength, stability, and protection. And it's interesting because that's what it's, Mamre is also associated with strength and fatness. Okay? And it represents the presence of Yah and his power and authority. The terebinth tree is believed to possess healing properties, with its resin known as the balm of Gilead, used for medicinal purposes and offering relief and restoration. Well, isn't it very interesting that this is where he's camped out after circumcising himself and all of the men in the camp? And it's interesting that they're at a terebinth tree. I'm sure they're probably using the balm of Gilead for relief and restoration. Isn't it interesting how the practical comes out of this as well? But we've heard about the balm of Gilead and how it's in the course of Scripture, but we never really understand what is that balm of Gilead. How is it used? What's important about it? Probably worth more of a study. Numerous biblical references to the terebinth tree highlight its prominence in important events and stories, emphasizing its connection to divine intervention and restoration. I want to just wonder, this is Yah coming into the camp, and there's no sickness in heaven. There's no disease in heaven. There's no infirmities. There's no weakness. That's not in heaven. That is part of our realm. Those are the things that we walk through. We walk through those things to become strong. And
He was healed when he came into that room.
I'm wondering is you got the divine intervention. Were they healed immediately?
Have you not ever been having a headache or not feeling good, and once you get in church, coming together like this, we get in his presence, and it goes away. So that's what I think that's what happened. As soon as he looked up and realized that they were there, or their presence was known, he wasn't sick anymore.
It says he ran.
He ran to and fro.
And he bowed down.
Oh, so cool.
And circumcision for an adult male is not like a.
You're not want to be bowing down. I'm going to tell you that.
He was almost 100 years old.
Just like
Well,
that.
and can you imagine doing that to yourself?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Can you imagine doing that to
That's
yourself?
why he's the father of our faith.
With a dull mind.
No, he got the good knife.
Andy, yeah.
I use a Flintstone.
People that have sugar diabetes do it all the time.
That's different.
That's a little bit different. Giving yourself a shot is a lot different than cutting off a. Yeah.
We're skinny your wank, right? So there's no way I could lay that on a chopping block and go at it with a hatchet, you know.
Brenda would help you.
I don't-
Brenda'd be right there
Yeah,
for
it'd
you
be
to
like,
help you.
no.
Oh, okay. some more things about. Okay, John gave you that information about the terebinth tree, so I'm going to give you traditionally the other side of the terebinth tree. It is said that the terebinth tree itself would expand its branches out to provide shade for all those who came under it. But that oak tree or that terebinth tree was also considered possibly at one point, and it could have happened later down the line too, but a cultic shrine dedicated to one of their sky gods in their pantheon of many gods. And anyway, and it was said then that the tree would, if you sat under that tree, it gives concept of shade, which typically meant to come under the rule of authority of a sovereign. So let's take the cultic part, the counterfeit part away, because we know that the enemy doesn't do anything new. He counterfeits to come under the shade of the tree of life. Yeshua means that you're under his authority, and he is sovereign. He is sovereign in your life. So here we go back to that idea of seeing tree over several times in this, just the first few verses. What tree are we under? You know, it's brought up. It's the third day. What's the third day? The third day is resurrection. It's first fruits, which coincides on the menorah. Oh, right here. That's the word. I stick that. Which coincides with, when you look at it, huh?
Yeshua, the third one.
Yom Teruah. And what happens on Yom Teruah? There's supposed to be a shout, or a blowing, and the dead shall rise. Resurrection. And then one more time, when Sarah talks about, some versions say that she had, shall I have pleasure again? Some versions say pleasure, but what she was really talking about is really, should my body be resurrected to bring forth life? Shall my body come to life one more time? Because she was considering about, if somebody came and told me that I was going to have a baby, I probably would go, because there's no parts. I'd be like, yeah, okay. But you know what? If y'all said it, it would be. And then I'd be thinking, man, I'm almost 60. That'd be fun.
Then you'd be like, okay, is this supposed to be a blessing or?
No, but you want to know something? That is, back then, and even today, people long to be able to bear children, and we should, because we should be wombing something in our life, spiritually or, I mean, physically, yes. Some of us, there's a time limit there and things, but there should be something we're wombing in our lives right now, vision and direction that he's given us to birth something. And hopefully, if we're not at that point, then we need to pray that Yah would bring us new vision and new direction of what to birth within our lives. And he sometimes he just shows you the next step, and it's going to lead to something else. But that's, we go to the next step. So anyway, here we have this idea of life where there was once death. Life where there was once death. And that, I think, is so important in our concept of everything, because it really does point back to Yeshua. Joe said the womb is special for it's the place of growth and protection. Very, very good. Of course, we know that Mitzrayim, or Egypt, was a womb of sorts, because that is where Israel grew and grew and grew. The Hebrew people grew and grew and grew and became many. So, anyway, I wanted to just touch on that part of the terebinth tree showing whose authority are we under, who's our
You
sovereign.
were talking about 42, the 42 letters of Yahweh, and then that 14. I divided that, and it comes up to 3. I think that's
There you go.
interesting.
What does that mean then? So it's pointing back to resurrection.
Third day.
Again, over and over. So do you think we need to have a clue?
Oh, absolutely. And just like you were saying about the other, I mean, our enemy mirrors everything and does everything a negative way. As far as the Illuminati, I'm not exactly sure what 42 means to them, but it's obviously a very important number because it pops up in everything they do.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So,
It'd be interested in a way to know, but very careful
yeah,
to know.
extremely careful.
Because when you really don't want to play around with the cultic things, and you sure don't want to mess with it unless you unless Yas told you it's okay but sometimes acquiring knowledge
Yeah,
isn't
if you go
necessarily
dancing
what we
with
want.
The devil, don't be surprised if he wants to leave.
Oh, that's true. That is very, very true.
Like that.
Yeah, but, you know, there's some things too, I
Like that a
mean, we
lot.
can't make ourselves ignorant. I mean, we can't just not, I mean, if you're not called to look at it or whatever, then don't. But I'm just always curious because, I mean, if something keeps popping up in my mind like that over and over again, there's gotta be a reason he keeps putting it there and I need to find out, you know?
It's true. That's true.
42 is a very important number to them too for some reason, and I don't know why, but.
All I can say is because I want to know, but I don't want to know, but I want to know.
Yeah. But don't be afraid of it.
And it would not fear,
Yeah.
but I know this is going to be a short rabbit trail till Pastor John jumps back in, is that I know that we've had several people throughout the life of worship. So this congregation officially it began far before that, but this congregation officially began in September of 2005. And since that time, we've had many that have been warlocks and witches pass through here and have come out on the other side. And I remember one guy, we were going through and just trying to recognize things and symbols we have in our own lives, like the ink and things like that we allow in our jewelry or in our home, and how that
Think
brings
about it.
demonic.
Yeah, 'cause you don't think about it.
Because it opens the door for demonic stuff. And I remember him talking about, he said, you just have to be really, really careful. And he says, I know from what I speak, because I've done this and this and this and this and this as a high part of the occult. And so drawing him out and doing that, he was always recommend don't do that. You know, we had a picture of some of what we were using overhead projector at the time. So, yeah.
So it's been a bit.
It's been...
Yeah, things have changed a lot.
Yeah, we still have overhead projectors at Life of Worship. They're in storage, but we still have them. But nonetheless, that's why I said we're not fearing, but you still have to be wise.
Right.
Wise. Okay, Pastor John.
Since we were talking about the three visitors, it's also kind of interesting to look at, what does three mean? And I want to jump over into
Besides resurrection?
Besides resurrection, yeah. So we have these three visitors that appear to Abraham in Genesis 18:2, and that word ra'ah, which is the root of Vayera. Vayera is the root is ra'ah. What was ra'ah? What does it mean? To see, and as we were talking about earlier, to see beyond, right? And it's repeated 3 times in the first 2 verses. That's in Genesis 18:1 and 2. That word ra'ah is. Abraham tells Sarah to use 3 measures of meal to make cakes in 18:6. 3 people are rescued from Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his 2 daughters, in Genesis 19. And on the 3rd day, Abraham sees Moriah. On the 3rd day, Moriah, Mount Moriah. It's Genesis 22:4.
And on the 3rd day, what did Yah do?
Raised Yeshua from...
He created what?
Oh, on the 3rd day of creation.
Trees.
The trees. Huh. Created the trees. That's very good. The 3rd letter...
Well, if you want to go that way, the 3rd feast is the
First fruits. Yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. So, let's see.
What are you looking for?
So the 3rd letter in the Hebrew alphabet is the letter Gimel. It means to lift up.
Lift up your eyes, prophetic.
Lift up your eyes. It also is the first letter crowned alphabetically. So the root gamel means to recompense another, to bring to completion. to deal fully with, to ripen, bear ripe, as in almonds, and term used to describe the actions of Aaron's name, meaning the light bringer. It's a rod yielding almonds in Numbers 17:8. So remember, Aaron's rod that budded was an almond branch. So this gimel is very interesting, being the third letter. Let me summarize what that means. One, we're talking about to bear fruit. A rod that was dead that comes to life. Resurrection. We have that which brings to completion. What does resurrection do? It brings to completion of Messiah's work. And let's see, to ripen, bear fruit, and to recompense another. In other words, to compensate again for another. So what it is in the recompense is that when there is something that is not there, it's reestablished. So we think we have that concept of that in restoration, that which the locusts have eaten, that type of idea, that which was destroyed by an attack, that which is that should be there and it's not, that the Father supplies recompense. He always restores and makes it taken care of. Now, it may not necessarily be monetary, but in some way or another, the Father will, and we look forward to that time in the future when it's like we will see our reward as well. But also in this life, and there's one way or another, the Father always takes care.
Rick.
Yeah, Jubilee.
You just mentioned a second ago about the hospitality, and I think that it's in our lifestyle, we have learned about the ancients over there, about the hospitality that they have. I mean, once you were invited in, you were under their protection, and they fed you and did everything they took it very seriously. So I was kind of curious on this. Did you notice that when he come up, he talked about sending a servant so he could get water and everything, but he never invited them into this tent? Is there a reason that you think that they did that?
I think that sitting under that tree, that tree is what's significant, because there was prophetic implications to it. And the tree, the fresh air, it's officially what we would call spring. So I don't know.
King showed up at your house. You think you keep him out in the yard, or you think you invite him in?
I think you'd know
Oh, yeah.
which way you're supposed to be going.
Well, I mean, inside of this tent, it may have been hot or uncomfortable, and it was more comfortable to be outside. I mean, the breeze and the cool of the day to be outside.
All I know is they said they rested under the terebinth tree. They found rest under the terebinth tree.
Yeah. Well, I don't doubt that, but I think that it goes against what we know as the ancient hospitality, that he was not invited in. And I was just wondering why is there some reason other that you think besides, well, it's probably hot in there.
Well, I don't know, because
Been laid up the last couple of days and hadn't been able to vacuum.
I'd like to research that. I don't honestly know, but we do know that hospitality. We even see Lot come in when the two messengers come in there. He does. They cross the threshold of his tent, and when you cross the threshold, you're officially under the care and under the protection of the threshold, whose home you've covered. So he then carried that responsibility.
They did decline it first, though. They did decline it first.
Well, that's why I was going to bring up is maybe he did offer them into the tent, but they declined.
But the tent, the place, I don't know,
Well,
because
I
I
think
don't.
there's a difference between tent versus a house, because Lot lived in a home.
That's
I
true.
mean, he lived in the city in a home, and so he's got more room, more space, more.
But he did protect them once he got in there. He did protect them.
He did protect them, not so well
And
as
so,
girls, but
I mean, there was probably no threat out there.
I think that's Rick. That's something I'd like to research a little bit more myself and find out some more information on that and do some.
But you know, you think about
Study and look at the
it's like, man,
Hebrew.
it was all hanging out like out in front of your tent. It's more comfortable under shade when you're outside than
Well, our
in
tents
Well,
don't
there
have
was
enough
room for
room
you
for
in
all.
our
Yeah, I mean, tents usually don't have a lot of room.
You know, but back then, that was his house.
Yeah.
His tent.
And we've got to remember that the tabernacle was a tent.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong. The tents could be big. I want us to jump over back to this idea of this third day, this 3 that Pastor John was talking about in third day and resurrection, because we know the trees were created, but what kind of trees does the word specifically mention? Fruit-bearing trees. Okay. In order for a seed to live, it must die, and then it's resurrected. So we have that resurrection idea again. But then you go back to the idea that people are trees. What kind of trees are we supposed to be? Fruit-bearing trees. So we have this idea with this number 3, seed should be within us. And the seed that he planted within us, and then the seeds that we go out and plant as well. But what do we have to do to live? We have to die to live. So death and resurrection one more time in that picture.
You also have that whole idea with when going to war, what type of trees are not allowed to be cut down? Fruit-bearing trees. So the ones that are cut down are the ones that do not bear fruit. They are the ones that are used for the fires, for building up ramps, siege ramps, and all that type of thing. But the fruit-bearing trees are not to be touched. It's very interesting.
Somebody who's got an army that believes in the scorched earth, and then it's no hope.
Like Sherman.
That's just messed up.
Yeah, that was pretty messed up. So,
I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but he also says that he doesn't want trees put up at his tabernacle, beside, doesn't he? No trees allowed in.
Well,
or is that later on?
there
I think it's
is
specific trees that aren't allowed.
Yeah.
the terebinth tree was also a place that the pagans used to set up in their high places. Now, this also going back to the number 3 is remember Gimel. So if you have the Hebrew letter Gimel, and it's the first one that's crowned. You know how they put the different symbols on top of the letters, around the letters, so that you can get the sound of what's being said. It's the first one to be crowned. So follow with me on this one. The Torah portion is stamped with the number 3 because it represents the crowned man, Messiah, being poured out for our peace in order to make us complete. Kala, the word for bride, comes from the root to be complete or finished. So we are the Kala, we are the bride. We want to be the bride. We hope we're the bride. The light bringer, which remember Aaron's name means light bringer. It's his rod that bore fruit, that bloomed. And the light bringer came that we might yield forth fruit. So the same promise given to Abraham are also available to us today. Yeah, because it really comes back, it comes to this. Because the 3 appear to Abraham, but do you ever think about this? I want to go to Genesis 22:1. Go to Genesis 22:1. Yeah, 22:1. Now it came about after these things that Elohim tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am, Hineni. And so Abraham's tested. And in spite of all of this, we see that we see a willingness here. And it's like, here I am. I just can't imagine such an encounter with him. He's had this encounter with the dividing of the pieces. He has this encounter of the promises. Look at the heavens, and you're going to have a seed. You're going to have a promised one. And now these 3 show up at the camp. I never thought of it before until I looked at what the terebinth tree was about, the balm of Gilead, the healing properties, that connecting that that he was able to get up and run, because when you come into the presence of Yah, like Joy, you were saying, is that infirmity goes.
That does.
And so, what an expectation. We gather together on Shabbats. Why do we gather together? Is it for us? Yes, it is for us to come into his presence, because it is his set apart day. It's his appointed time. And so therefore, what better time to see promises fulfilled than on the day he called us to gather with him? And I think that's really important, is to come with great expectations that if we're dealing with something in our lives, then this is the day that we bring it before his throne.
Well, and again, we go back to the appointed time, because officially it would be Pesach, where Abraham sees the three visitors, and then it's supposed to Lot, the destruction happened between the evenings, so at the beginning, the beginning of the first day of unleavened bread. And so you really have both of those right there, and the emblems and everything else there for it as well. So at the appointed times. It's coming at the appointed times. So.
Okay. Well, I want to
But there has to be a cutting off before destruction, too. So.
Yeah, exactly.
You were going to say something, so I won't go there. You go ahead.
I
already.
Well, say what you're going to say, and then we'll
No,
go to. Yeah, because we have time.
Well, I just think in the midst, before the resurrection occurred in their bodies, a cutting off had to happen first. So, before, and remember, we're talking resurrection, it is said that possibly, and this goes back to, that possibly when they went to Gerar and they went and they were Abimelech said, man, this lady good looking and I want her as mine, and all of that sort of same thing happened again that had repeated itself from Egypt. That is said, Abimelech said, pray for us. And Abraham prayed that their wombs would be open. And some tradition says that it was at that point where Sarah's womb started to come back to life. And that goes because and then of course we see that circumcision, literally something's being cut off so that true life can be put back in their bodies and a youthfulness can be restored, so to speak, however that may look. But then it goes back to that idea too, as yes, we've got to cut off the dead so that we might live. We've got to cut things out of our life so that we have new life. And you look at that in your garden. What do you have to do? You got to cut it out. I was talking earlier that I'm about to go whack off my strawberry plants, and they've grown and spread so much this year on the side of my house. But it's that time I've got to go cut them off so that they'll produce even more next year. It's going to be painful on tomorrow. But nonetheless, there has to be a cutting off for that to happen. But at the same moment, with this cutting off, there's life coming in. So let's think of their position then when they were with Abimelech. He prayed that the wombs would be open, and Sarah's womb was later open. So what does that tell us? And I've talked to you guys about this before. When there is a need in your life, you need finances, then you start praying for people for finances. You need your kids saved, your children saved, your children need to come to the knowledge of Yeshua, then you start praying for others that way. You need healing, then stop being so inwardly focused and start praying for others' healing. I'm sidetracking this right now. By the way, I just mastered the videos where I talked about the invisible barriers to healing and the demonic stuff for healing. I listened to them again, and I'm the one that preached those messages. They were so good, and I would encourage anybody that's dealing with stuff, go listen to those messages again. I just did it on Thursday, and I went in. I said, John, these are so good, and you guys know I've talked about it, but we're talking about praying for healing, and healing is something that so many of us need in our bodies. And I said before, if we don't have 20/20 vision, and you say, I don't need healing, if your vision's not 20/20, I guess you do, don't you? So, there we go. But something must die in order to live. Things have to be cut off, and we see that in Abraham's body, and then we see in their lives as well that when there's a need for something, that you go and you pray for others for those very things, because something happens. As Abraham was praying, his own wife's womb is opened. Whether it happened that moment, or the beginning happened, or it happened at the moment when Yeshua and the other two guests were there, whatever it is, there was a preparation for something to die and then to live. So, okay.
Well, I want to share. I want us to jump forward, because in this chapter, we've often read through this Torah portion. We've talked about, Abraham's interceding. He said, "What if you find 50? What about 45? What about 40, 30?" And we do a countdown. And we're like, "Why is he counting down?" It's like he's just, he's negotiating with Yah. It's like, okay, why is he doing that?
Because he knows there's not.
And it's like, enough, Abraham. But the scriptures detail every single number, and there's a purpose for every single number. And I wanted to share with you, and if you're online, I have it pulled up here so that you can see it as well. And I want to go through these numbers and actually look at what the meaning is. Let's look at it real quick. 50. So this is taken from Genesis 18. And beginning with verse 23, and he's talking about, wait a minute, would you actually do this? I mean, what if there's, 50 good guys down there, right? 50 righteous. So if there are 50 righteous, so if you're taking notes, you might want to write this down. 50 is the same number for the words it has a numeric value of noon. I think we talked about that last week or the week before last. Noon is the value of 50, which is also the numerical number for the word kingdom, or heir to the throne. So 50 also equals the numeric value of Duma, which is his blood, and Yovel, or the Jubilee. So Yahweh does hold back judgment when the blood of the heir to the throne, who is part of the kingdom, and those will be set free, is basically when you want to put those together. Yahweh does indeed hold back judgment when the blood of the heir to the throne, who is part of the kingdom, and those will be set free, which is Jubilee. So if there's 50 righteous, there's a representation of the heir to the throne in that place. So I thought that was kind of an interesting connection. 45 says, is if there were 5 less, or 45, 5 is the numeric value of the letter He, which means revelation, light, or breath of life. 5 also represents the 5 books of Moses, or the Torah. In Scripture, this implies that Yahweh would not destroy those who have the revelation of the Torah and his breath of life, that is, his spirit. So I thought that was kind of interesting. 5 less, or 45. 45 is the numeric value of Lot, and also Adam, or mankind. So 45 is the numeric value of Lot, and also Adam, or mankind. While Yahweh didn't find 45 righteous souls, he has indeed provided salvation for all mankind. Those who obey, like Lot, will be saved. So the idea of 45. So now we've talked about 50. We've talked about 5, which talks about revelation, light, or the breath of life. But the place didn't have revelation, or light, or the breath of life, if you want to look at the flip side of it. 40 righteous. 40 represents trials and testings in Scripture, such as 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days of Yeshua spending time in the wilderness to be tested. And the 40 is also the numeric value of Lua, or mine, or for me, as well as 2 phrases in Leviticus 25:25, Ga'alo, which means his kinsman, and V'ga'al, which and shall redeem. So this speaks about those who belong to him will be tested as he was tested, but will be saved by the kinsman redeemer. 40 righteous. If you want me to repeat anything, let me know. Then there's 30. What about 30 righteous? 30 is the numeric value for the word or the letter lamed. I think we talked about lamed last week. Or the shepherd's staff. 30 is also the numeric value of bakaha, or in power, and vachita, or which means he will purify, and va'a chaye, which means and I make alive. So what does 30 righteous or the 30 mean? You put it all together. He will not destroy those he purified and made alive through the power or through his power, through his spirit, and followed the shepherd, Yeshua. So let me say that again. 30, by taking all of those different words that add up to the value of 30, plus lamed, which is the letter, numerical value of the letter lamed is 30. He will not destroy those he purified and made alive through his power or his spirit, and followed the shepherd, Yeshua. 30 righteous. Were there 30 righteous? There wasn't 30 righteous that were, otherwise he would not destroy. What about 20 righteous? 20 is the numeric value of the letter kaf, or the palm of the hand, and it also means covering. It's also the numeric value of yada, or his hand, and aviv, which is the first month in which Passover occurs. So what month is it that he's going down to Sodom and Gomorrah? It's the first month. Putting those things together, he will not destroy those who are covered and protected by his hand, and who entered into the covenant partaking in the Passover covenant. I think that's pretty interesting. And then what about 10 righteous? And 10 represents the letter Yod, meaning spirit of Yehovah, or spirit of Yahweh, or hand of Yahweh. The word phrases Vehove, which means and I came, and Avo, I will come. And so putting that together, Yahweh came and will come again and save those who have his spirit. So if we want to put all of those things back together as a continuous thought, Yahweh does indeed hold back judgment when the blood of the heir to the throne, who is part of the kingdom, and those will be set free, Jubilee. He has indeed provided salvation for all mankind. Those who obey like Lot will be saved. Those who belong to him will be tested as he was tested, but will be saved by the kinsman redeemer. He will not destroy those he purified and made alive through the power of his spirit, and followed the shepherd, Yeshua. He will not destroy those who are covered and protected by his hand, and who entered into the covenant, partaking in the Passover covenant. Yahweh came and will come again and save those who have his spirit.
Amen.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool. I like that.
Joy.
No, I was
She was
praising.
praising Yah. Yeah. So it's pretty, I thought that was pretty cool. Did you have something? All right. Any comments on any of that? So I just step right in and let me jump out of that real quick.
Well, I think also, I think one of the things we need to look, because you went through those numbers and things like that, is what does Abraham represent? The bride. And it goes back to what I said earlier, how we're to take dominion and disciple all nations. His voice is the protective voice of the bride. And again, it goes back to what we've already mentioned. The protective voice of the bride is not going to expose like Ham. and say, well, this and this and this, or this happened, or so and did you hear what life of work, all of that junk. But the protective voice of the bride will cover and love and again intercede. Our job is to intercede, because we're Mr. and Mrs. Adam are once beings of light, because Yah's word is light. He is light. So therefore, if he spoke us into creation, we were beings of light. We've talked about that, and the congealed blood came together when we fell, and we got skin and all of this other stuff. But we are supposed to at least spiritually return to that place of light and be that protective voice, the voice that covers their brother, their sister, the voice that brings life, and the voice that takes authority and remembers who she is. That's the bride, the protective voice of the bride. Because it says, far be it for you to do such a thing, but put the righteous to death with the wicked. That's that protective voice. And that means that's that role of that Iser Kenegdo, the one that's challenging her bridegroom. Are you sure that's, are you sure you want to do that? And we see Abraham in his life persisting until he gets the promise of the seed, the promise of a son, the promise, the vision that Yah gave him. He says, for this, even here though, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. And Yah went his way, and the Lord, or Yah, went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. That's intimacy, guys. And think about this too. Did Yah need to stop and check in with Abraham before he went and did his job? He didn't have to. But he prophetically lets his people know. He says, just like the other side is telling us what they're going to do through movies and TV and all of that, Yah tells his people what he's going to do too. His prophets, his people. And if we know his voice, then when he says turn left, we'll turn left. But that's the intimacy that we have with our bridegroom, or the intimacy if we are his treasure possession and he is our treasure possession. Because it says the finished, when he had finished speaking to Abraham. That word can also be translated accomplished or fulfilled. When he had accomplished his dealings with Abraham, when he fulfilled them, he came because he loved him, and because he had a role that he wanted Abraham to play, but he wanted the bride to work with him in the kingdom. Yahweh can do everything all himself, get everybody taken care of, turn things around, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants his bride to look like him, and his bride's got to make herself ready to look like him. I think I've told you back before, if you ever go back and read J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series, you find out at the end that the hobbits, those little innocent hobbits, they had to go through a battle and they had to go through hardships so they would learn how to defend their own home because troubles were coming. And the king, so you see the king come with a sword in his hand and healing in the other. There's so much symbology in that stuff when you read the books. They're good, but nonetheless, that's going on another rabbit trail. But what I was saying is that he had accomplished and he had fulfilled, and we go through what we're going to go through on purpose, and he wants a bride who looks like him. And I see you, Joe. I'm going to finish with this, and then we're going to go. And here, when you say he had finished speaking to Abraham, that word "to" is translated near or with, and that, again, that's intimacy. Are we intimate with our bridegroom? And then speaking, when he had finished speaking, that word there is commune, or communing with him, another concept of intimacy. So you could read that verse as Genesis 18:28 through 33, but you could read it as, and Yehovah went on his way when he had accomplished or fulfilled his intimacy with Abraham. I'm going to read that again. And Yehovah, or Yahweh, went on his way when he had accomplished or fulfilled his intimacy with Abraham. So when Abraham drew near to Yahweh was also drawing near to him to accomplish what he wants. That's why it's so important that we draw near to him now, and he will respond how? Like this, waiting for you to come up higher? No, he's going to go, oh, you're coming? It's going to be like the prodigal. One's running, the other's running. You come here and there's an intimacy that happens, and he's like, okay, now that you're here, start listening to my voice. I've got some stuff to let you know about. I've got some things that you need to know about, because I have to go destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. I have to go destroy the vestiges that have been erected in your life, the things that have been erected in your city or your country or the world, and you need to be in on this plan. And then we get to be that bride that says, are you sure? Or we say, yes, Father, what can I do alongside of you? So that's that intimacy. That's that treasure possessions, that amzagula. You know, aren't we supposed to be the treasure possession? And I've talked about that before, but he is our treasured possession as well. So Abraham returned. How do you think Abraham went back into his tent? What condition do you think he went back in with? How do you feel when you've had an intimate time with the King? Don't you just feel like you're high? I know how Jackie feels. Jackie's high for hours. High on Yeshua.
You are too.
Yeah, we all are. And yet you feel that joy, just like you said, and you're happy. And remember, he was in the presence of the King, so he's healed, set free. His child is going to be there within this time next year. So his promises are answered. He just got to spend time in the presence of the bridegroom. He got to spend time in his presence, and he got to he stood by while they ate, but yet you guys know I like to serve you, and if I get to eat, great. If I don't, I still got to serve you. So I don't know, the way he returned to his tent was a different way than he was in the morning, I'm sure. And
well, I want to keep going on a little bit with that theme as well. And we see it in the story where Sarah sends Hagar and Ishmael out. So if you'll go over to Genesis chapter 21, begin with verse 9 through 21. Will someone read that for us? Genesis 21, 9 through 21.
That Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, who Hagar had born to Abraham, making fun of
not Itzhak. Isaac.
I'm trying to pronounce it wrong. So Sarah said to Abraham, throw this slave girl out and her son. I will not have this slave girl's son as your heir with my son again.
Isaac.
My brain today. Okay. Abraham became very distressed over the matter of his son, but God said to Abraham, don't be distressed because of the boy and your slave girl. Listen to everything Sarah says to you, because it is your descendants through Isaac who will be counted. But I also make a nation from the son of the slave girl, since he is descended from you. Abraham got up early in the morning, took bread and a skin of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child. Then he sent her away. After leaving, she wandered into the desert around Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she left the child under a bush and went and sat down, looking the other way, about a bow's shot distance from him, because she said, I can't bear to watch my child die. So she sat there, looking the other way, crying and weeping. God heard the boy's voice, and the angel of God came to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what's wrong with you, Hagar? Don't be afraid, because God has heard the voice of the boy in his present situation. Get up, lift the boy up, and hold him tightly in your hand, because I'm going to make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went, filled the skin with water, and gave the boy water to drink. God was with the boy, and he grew. He lived in the desert and became an archer. He lived in the Paran desert, and his mother chose a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Keep going or stop.
That's good. That's good right there. And so we have a very interesting story here. And a lot of times we in our modern thinking and modern cultural eyes, we look at Ishmael as not a good guy because we associate it with a particular religion in the Middle East and how they want to kill everybody that's not like them, and that's how we view it. But so let's set the record straight in regards to what Yah said about Ishmael, and he told Abraham this. Yeah, I'm going to make him a great nation. I don't worry about this situation. I've got it. I mean, Sandy was just talking about this. What happens when you come into the presence of Yah and he speaks to your heart? Everything that you were worrying about,
Yes.
everything that was weighing heavy
Goes.
on top of you, it all lifts and goes. And this is his son. He loves Ishmael just as much as he loves Isaac, but Isaac is the child of promise. Sarah says, look, we can't have them in this circumstance. We cannot have them together because we don't want any temptation that what belongs to Isaac can be spread.
And that was
Ishmael.
right. He had to be removed so that Isaac was clearly the heir. He had to be removed, just like Lot.
That cutting off you were talking about.
Exactly. Before life comes, the cutting off has to.
Yeah.
To protect the seed, that's what.
So
protect. Yep.
a lot of times we look at these circumstances as, well, Abraham messed up. He birthed something before the promise, so now he's got to deal with the Ishmael thing. I don't think that's the way that y'all looks at him.
Doesn't seem like it, does it?
Is that every child of Abraham is blessed, and that's and y'all said, remember when you go back to Genesis chapter 12, that every nation will be blessed because of Abraham. And so there, yes, Ishmael did not hold to the faith of Abraham, but I'll say this: what about Moses' father-in-law, Yitro? He didn't come of the lineage of Abraham, but there is a family connection to Abraham. I always say the lineage of Abraham. He wasn't from the lineage of Jacob, but he's still connected to Abraham. And there was something that was something very interesting there, that Yitro then had his eyes opened in the encounter in the wilderness in Exodus chapter 19, that he gave praise to Yah for all that he did, that Yah had been doing through Moses. So we got to keep those things in mind, that there's always this path of redemption for every one of us and this whole thing. So a lot of times we say, is there a mistake? No. So does anything have to be rectified?
But yet it does say he turns all things around for his glory. He can take where we've chosen the wrong thing and turn it around for his glory.
And that's
To me,
true
part
too.
of this is prophetic, and it's cyclical too. I mean, you don't want to say things. Okay, I heard this. You don't want to say things are predestined, but if the Lord is working and He's moving in our lives, and He's brought us in through the dirt, and He's painting a picture of His what do you call those mosaic things of life and what's going to go down, and to Him to be merciful, to put her out in the desert with her child and say you're going to be a nation. I mean, there's some kind of plan and planning going on. So
I think Sarah's role in that was very much the eyes are connected there as well, because there could not have been an intermingling of seed.
yes.
You cannot have two seeds in the same field. So it was definitely the role of the Iser one more time to say and challenge, it's time for him to go. It's time for him to go so the pure seed could survive. And again, there's we have to draw that line for ourselves too.
And God was
It's
not
time for us to
shocked by
go.
any of this.
And again, I believe that we make mistakes, but I believe Yah turns them around and He uses those.
Yes.
So
Rick had something to
That's
say
it.
first.
okay.
The
go ahead.
prophetic
Enjoy.
things go on.
So we know the line continues from Abraham down through Jacob and through that. That one's the line that we know of become Israel. But Yeah, to Yeshua, but the one from Esau and from Ishmael, do they split or they one line?
There, Ishmael, of course, is Hagar is the Egyptian handmaiden. When they went to Egypt, that was Pharaoh, and it said that it was even
See,
Pharaoh's
why would the
daughter.
Lord do all that? Why would he save Hagar if there wasn't some kind of plan, something he had, like a book he was reading out?
And in reality, I guess you could look what family line. In reality, since that is Abraham's son, then that would be like a second or third cousin to Esau. I guess you could look at it that way. But Esau forms his own people groups.
So there would be like three. You have the Jewish, the Hebrew, Yeshua lineage, and now you got Esau and Ishmael.
Esau, when you see the descendants of Esau, I think I preached this back in 2014 or something like that. But Esau is really where you see the Greek influence and all of that. That's where Esau's people,
Right.
See, and they were way off.
democracy came from Esau. You know, of course we do not live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. People don't even understand that. They go to school and that's never even taught. Okay, I'm not going down that road. But you see all of this stuff influence, and of course every people group then breaks off into more. I mean, so Esau spreads into more, and Ishmael, but literally his bloodline, those that are of Abraham's blood, spreads throughout the world. But then you go back, we're all of Noah's blood too. Then everybody is, and go back from there. It's also Adam. But we all come from one place, and then we spread, and we choose. And I think what the most important thing is, do we follow his instruction or not? That determines his people.
So,
Joy.
I had something to say a minute ago, so that goes with that. So I'm going to read a verse back over here in 18, sorry. It's 19. And it was when he was talking about Yahweh to himself or whatever, should I let Abraham know this? And then it says in verse 19, for I have made myself known to him so that he will give orders to his children and to his household after him to keep the way of Yehovah and do what is right and just, so that Yehovah may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him.
Mm-hmm.
So that right there shows that it was important. It's important for us to follow what he says.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's very prophetic as well. I mean, if we follow that, then it's going to go well for our children. Although I didn't teach them that. I'm trying now. It may be too late as adults, but you know, I repent. Yeah.
It's never too late.
Yeah, I repent. But anyway, I just think that's kind of cool right there. So anyway, I liked that I made myself know
Of Israel, and that were dispersed among the nations of the four corners of the earth. Esau, the rabbis say Rome is Esau. So we really have an interesting kind of
Roman Greek.
connection there. Carthage, which was in northern Africa, was of the lost tribes of Israel, and they were always fighting the Romans. So you can also see the Jacob Esau thing going on. Rome can never defeat Carthage, and then but then you have Ishmael, and Ishmael, it was all down there in the Middle Eastern area of that big peninsula where Saudi Arabia dominates, but has all the different little countries around it. Yeah, they're a lot of times they're the Bedouins. They're not Egyptians. They are. They're no longer. Well, they're still Bedouins that live there, but they've been made very, very wealthy, and it's different than Moab. It's different than Ammon, which is Jordan. It's different than Persia. It's in the area of Babylonian, Iraq, and that. So it's unique in and of itself, but I think some of the biggest corruption. Well, I don't know if I can put it in that. The issue is that they began following the moon god. Ishmael began following the moon god.
Isn't that
And and that is all part of the Babylonian religions.
Isn't that the calendar that most of the world follows, including the
Hillel calendar, yes.
a calendar of the moon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly right. And then you see those influences, and now we say, well, most of Arabia is Muslim, and what do they set their calendar to? The moon. And so, but we also have in the 600s when Islam came around, is that it was. I just have to say this: Muhammad was extremely confused because between the Catholics and between the Jews and even the Catholics and the Jews and then all the moon religions, he thought, well, let's assimilate them all together as a universal religion. And then when it was rejected, then it became a religion of force, of violence, and Hamas. And so, and there was also, of course, the split between the Shiites and the Sunnis and all of that. But so we actually have 3 distinct lineages that are coming out of the line of. We have the Ishmael lineage. We have the Esau lineage. We still battle Esau today.
Yeah, we do.
I think the heavy influences within our Babylonian type government is really related to Esau. We have, and then we have the line of Jacob. So, but
War's still on.
and this is the battle.
Yes.
It's a battle of Hasatan to divide and to conquer.
Yes.
But what I wanted to get in here is in the last couple minutes in regards to Hagar, is that she apparently looks like she lost everything. She was living in the tents of Abraham, and so he sends her out. I got some bread for you. I got a bottle of water, and we'll see you later. But the issue with Abraham was that he had great peace, and over the situation is that he knew that Yahweh was going to look out after her and his son, that they would be taken care of. Well, Hagar isn't seeing that picture. But what is really awesome here is that at the last drop of water, she tells her son to go get under that bush and chill out in the shade. She didn't want to watch him die. But at the end of what appeared to be the life spring of water, that connection to life is gone in the wilderness of Beersheba, then Yah appears.
That's right.
And I think that's really important for us, is that when we get to that point, we feel like there is nothing left. I can't generate. I've done everything that I possibly can do to survive, and everything's used up and nothing's there. And then there's a Christophany. There's the appearance of Yah. And that's what I see in this. Now, it says that it's an angel of Elohim, in my version. It says, but it says that she did something. It says she lifted up her voice and wept. Again, we got another concept. We lift up our eyes and we see the appearance. We have a revelation. Here she lifts up her voice. The lamentation, this cry of mourning. And what did Israel do in Egypt? They cried out, and then Yah brought deliverance. And so she lifts up her voice. Where's she from? Egypt. And Yah hears the voice, hears her voice, and it says a voice. Elohim heard the lad crying, and the angel of Elohim called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What's the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for Elohim has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him." So we get the promise is now repeated. So this is really amazing to me.
Me too.
That the preservation of life that is not centered, that we see in the descendants, is not centered on the Yah of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want you to recognize a preservation
God's mercy is
and a
there.
nation
No, and you wanna
that comes out that is not even going to be one that follows him, but is waiting for someone to bring the light, honestly, is what it is. And
also remember that that son was a result of a union that Yah did not
approve of.
Yeah, not that he didn't approve of it, but that's not what he ordained.
Right.
That, so even though that they were that, they, I mean, the fly was coming over here. That he had a blessing for him, even as a result of what happened.
See, so there's
He
something
didn't-
going
he
on we
didn't say,
can't
well, I'm
see.
not going to have anything to do with them. I told him not to do that.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't tell him to do that. He blessed
Mhm.
Hagar and Ishmael.
and there's something connected here too, because we
He showed
have
his heart. He showed his heart.
Mhm. As Pastor Sandy brought out earlier, Abraham lifted up his eyes. That word lifted up is repeated. She lifted up her voice. In verse 18, the command is, arise, lift up the lad. So now we have double in this portion, this part about Hagar. We have 2 mentions of lift up, 2 mentions of a resurrection, 2 mentions of the concubine who also has a child, the concubine who's not a bride but is connected to the heavenly promises. And so there is a bride who has a child of promise, and that eventually we're talking about a bride who enters into that the wedding tent with the bridegroom. But the concubine who's not allowed into that special place still has a place at the wedding table, the wedding guests. And I think that's where and it is a great nation. And there's therefore from every people, every walk, every language, every tongue, nations will come and they'll gather together on that at the wedding supper of the Lamb.
But it is only those that go through the door that will be part.
Right?
If you're not gone through the door, you're not going to be gathering at the supper as a guest or anything else.
Right. And then it says, then Yah opened her eyes and she saw, so Ra'ah, a well of water. It was there all along. It was there all along.
Or was it?
Or was it? And she went and filled the skin with water and gave a lad to drink. And Yah was with the lad, and he grew, and he lived. So,
And he wasn't a lad. I mean,
and it says it's a lad. You know, he was a young man at this point in time, in my opinion.
well, it also Isaac is 37. So he's how much older?
He's her.
14.
So
14 years. So he's in his 50s.
Yeah. So I want to leave you with this verse, and then we're going to close. And it says in Matthew 6:25 through 34. So I tell you to stop worrying about what you'll eat, drink, or wear. Isn't life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds. They don't plant, harvest, or gather the harvest into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you worth more than they? Can any of you add a single hour to your life by worrying? And why worry about clothes? Notice how the flowers grow in the field. They never work or spin yarn for clothes. But I say that not even Solomon in all his majesty was dressed like one of these flowers. That's the way Yah clothes the grass in the fields. Today it's alive, and tomorrow it's thrown into the incinerator. So how much more will he clothe you people who have so little faith? Don't worry and say, what are we going to eat? Or what are we going to drink? Or what are we going to wear? Everyone is concerned about these things, and your heavenly Father certainly knows you need all of them. But first, be concerned about his kingdom and what has his approval. Then all these things will be provided for you. So don't ever worry about tomorrow. After all, tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And I think that's just a perfect
What was that
little.
scripture again?
That's Matthew 6:25 through 34, and a great exclamation point. We see that in terms of how he took care of Hagar, and a nation survives. A great nation. And we were talking about it early. Pastor Sammy was bringing it up. It's when we have the supernatural encounters with Yah. We have a lot of things that bear down on us,
That's the
that we
intimacy,
worry
yeah.
about, that we think, I don't know how we're going to get through this part, or what about this conflict, or what about this provision issue, and how much more. Sometimes we just need to step back and read what Yeshua said. So anyway, I wanted to leave it with that, because we all need a Christophany. I like that word.
I don't.
I like that
I
word.
do not like that word at all.
I like that because we need a
I don't like it.
we
An
need
aha moment.
we need a Yeshua encounter.
Yes.
Then let's rename it.
Yeah.
We need encounters with Yeshua, and sometimes we need to see him. Sometimes that voice needs to be pretty audible.
Yes.
And
Yes.
guess what? There's precedent for it. The word tells us about it. Abraham has multiple encounters with the Most High. And there are great things that took place on every one of those encounters. And one of the things I got out of it today is like, he jumped up and ran because he was healed on the third day. So I just think I just think it's pretty amazing. Now I mean, take it for what you want, put it on the shelf. But for me, that's what I got out of it.
I've got to say though, you say he was healed on the third day, and that's really funny because if you think of injuries, the third day after it happens is when it is the worst.
But he was healed.
But
Tammy,
he was healed.
you were going to say something?
Well, when you brought up the Lord of the Rings, I don't know how many people have read all the books of the Chronicles of Narnia.
I haven't read any of
Read
them.
any of
I
them.
have read all of them.
Jonathan has to.
And it's put for children to understand, but when you read them, you can see the Bible from Genesis 1:1 to the period at the end of Revelation.
That's cool.
And all 7 books.
That's really cool.
cool.
You know, and they focus on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as the main book. But that's the beginning of Yeshua's ministry. That's the beginning of what's the Brit called a Shah, the Apostolic Scriptures.
Yeah, that's good.
I wanted
That's
to
good.
remind everybody about thank you for your giving, your tithes and your offerings. I want to remind you, just because we don't have the official place yet and right now, doesn't mean we still don't have the expenses. We do, and we have 4 or 5 storage units. So we're talking
5.
over 5. We're talking over $1,000 a month just for those storage units. Yes, and we're still looking, and you have to save up some money so you can put the utilities in, etc. when we go to our new place. So
And they do have them. I've
please,
seen them.
please remember your tithes. Thank you for giving, and please don't let up. We need you to remember that, and keep praying and interceding as we are being led to the new place, because we're excited about that too.
So, Father, we just bless you. We thank you for our gathering today and the words that you've spoken to us and the little nuggets. Father, I pray that the encouragement would be like a seed in the ground that multiplies 30, 60, and 100-fold. That, Father, that we bear much fruit, and that which is not being fruitful is cut off so that we can bear much fruit.
That's right.
And that, Father, that we represent the fullness of your kingdom as a congregation and as a gathering, whether it's locally or through the expanse of the streams here as those have gathered with us. We ask, Father, your blessings on the offerings, the tithes, the love gifts that are given into this ministry. That, Father, that you would also bless and return 100-fold and each amount that's given.
That's right.
That, Father, that your blessing is upon it, that you'd breathe upon it and bring forth life and bring forth a great harvest as well for each person to experience in multiple layers and levels and dimensions within their lives as well. Father, we just give you all the honor and the glory and the praise in the name of Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. We'll see you here in a bit.